So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over a quick topic test with a collection of GCSE exam style questions on solving quadratics at foundation level. Now a copy of the questions for you to have an attempt at before watching through this video is available for you to download by clicking on the link in the description, which I strongly recommend you do to see how much understanding you have on this topic. Now, before we get started, it's worth mentioning that there is no indication about whether these questions are designed for a non-calculator or a calculator paper. However, quadratics is quite common for it to appear on both papers, so it's definitely worth revising, even if it does appear on a previous paper. Now, when dealing with any algebra topic, it's always important that you do read a question, as many questions can become different questions if you do not read what is being asked of you. So again, make sure that you know the difference between factorize and solve and what the answers should look like. So with this first question, it says expand and simplify x plus 5 multiplied by x minus 5. So for this, what we need to do is expand the brackets. Now you can either use a grid or you can use loops. And again, generally speaking, for the 2 marks, it would usually come from expanding the brackets. So here we've got x squared, then we've got minus 4x, then we've got positive 5x, and then we've got minus 20. Now you'd usually get 1 mark for having 3 out of those 4 terms correct with their correct sign. And however, if you've written down the correct answer of x squared plus 1x, or just x, minus 20, then that should be good enough to get the 2 marks. If you can do it in your head, brilliant. Just make sure you've not made any silly mistakes. For question 2, it says to factorize x squared plus 12x plus 20. So here what we need to do is introduce double brackets. So for this, what we're looking for is 2 numbers that multiply together to give you positive 20, and added together give you positive 12. And the 2 numbers you should have are going to be 10 and 2. So they're going to be our numbers inside the bracket. So here we've got x, x, one's a 10, one's a 2. It doesn't matter what order you put them in, and they are both going to be positive. And the reason why it's positive is because this sign here, I don't know why I've just put green and crossed it out, but this sign here is the sign of the bigger number that you've chosen for your 2 numbers. And if this sign of the constant is the same, or is positive rather, then that means the 2 brackets will have the same sign. If that was a negative, then the signs inside the brackets are therefore going to be different. Moving on to question 3, so this is we need to solve this, and we can solve this by loads of different methods. You could use the quadratic formula if you really needed to, but I would say always try and solve it using by factorizing. And the first thing you also want to check is to make sure that it's equal to 0. So for this, what we're doing is we need to look out for 2 numbers that multiply together to give you minus 12 and added together to give you positive 4. So our 2 numbers are going to be 6 and 2. Now because this is a plus, that means our bigger number is going to be a plus, and because this is a negative, means it's going to be different signs in our brackets. So therefore we've got x equals 6 in one bracket and x minus 2, and that all equals 0. Now to solve this, what you've got to do is make each bracket equal to 0 and solve it for x. So x equals minus 6, so that's one solution. And for the second solution, we've got x minus 2 equals 0. So you take the 2 over by adding 2, so x equals 2. And there are my 2 answers. Moving on to question 4. Now question 4, you should be able to spot is a difference of 2 squares. So when factorizing this, it's just a case of knowing what you have to square to get x squared. Well, that's going to be x. What you have to square to get 25. Well, that's going to be 5. One's a plus and 1 is a minus. And again, it doesn't matter what order you've done it, even though I've done a different order to what I said. So from this, we then want to solve this. So x can either equal minus 5 or it could equal positive 5. So you can write your answer as minus 5 or positive 5, or you could write your answer as plus minus 5. Moving on to question 5. So again, what we need to do is factorize this first. So again, we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply together to give you positive 30, added together give you minus 11. So for this, our 2 numbers are going to be 5 and 6. So because this is a minus, the bigger of our 2 numbers is going to be a minus, so it's going to be minus 6. And because this is a plus, means that the signs inside the brackets are going to be the same. So therefore, if we've got minus 6, we're also going to have minus 5. Then solving this, our values are either going to be 5, positive 5, or positive 6. So the answers then are 5 or 6, or x equals, should write. Moving on to question 6, it says that the area of the rectangle is 66 centimeters squared. Using the information, show that x squared plus 7x minus 60 equals 0. So to work out the area, what I've got to do is multiply these two lengths together. So I've got x plus 1 multiplied by x plus 6, and that equals the area of 66. Now if I expand the brackets and collect the like terms, I'll end up with x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 66. Now we want to make this equal to 0, so I take the 66 over to the side by subtracting, in which I end up with x squared plus 7x minus 60 equals 0, and there is my final answer. I'm very generous for 3 marks. Then moving on to question 6b, it then says to solve it. So if I just write down what the equation was, so it was x squared plus 7x minus 60 equals 0. So what I'm looking for are two numbers that multiply together to give me minus 60 and added together give me positive 7. So looking at my two numbers, it's going to be 12 and 5. Now because this is a positive, it means the bigger number is going to be positive, and because this is a negative, it means the signs are going to be different. So looking at this, it's going to be x plus 12 in one bracket and x minus 5 in another, and again, doesn't matter what order you've put those brackets. So from this, our two solutions are going to be x equals minus 12 and x equals 5. Now because x refers to lengths, although we've got two possible answers, x cannot equal minus 12. And the reason for that is because if x was minus 12, then we'll end up with negative lengths. So to solve this, x has to equal just 5. So it's worth noting that so it cannot be minus 12, as we would then have negative lengths on the rectangle. And although that may not get you a mark for this particular question, for more problem solving or more proof questions, this may come into play. So always when you're looking at questions relating to shapes and perimeters and you end up with two values, try and check the validity of your two answers, because obviously one may be impossible for it to be.